The Xi'an JH-7, known in China as the Flying Leopard or the Faibao, and in NATO as the Flounder, is a modern, two-seat, twin-engined fighter bomber in service with the PLAAF and the PLANAF. As a capable CAS and anti-shipping platform, the JH-7 offers many strong capabilities to Chinese aviation, both in real life and in War Thunder. This video is a remaster of an older video I made on the JH-7A, as the sweeping changes and new additions in the latest update rendered that one outdated. Some of this video may be very familiar to those of you who watched the old one, but there are plenty of new additions. In this video, I'll cover the whole JH-7 family, going over their real-life history, their state in War Thunder, and how to make the most of them. In November 1977, the Xi'an Aircraft Company started work on a successor to the Nanchang Q5, which was a heavily modified strike version of the J6. If you'd like to know more about the Q5, I have a full video about it in the top right. Xi'an envisioned a larger, two-seat aircraft in the same league as the General Dynamics F-111 Aardvark, the Sukhoi Su-24 Fencer, and the Panavia Tornado IDS. After 6 years of R&D work, made harder by competing requirements from the Air Force and the Navy, the design finally came out as the JH-7, JH being Chinese for fighter bomber. The result was a decently large aircraft built around WS-9 engines, themselves being copies of the Rolls-Royce Spays found in-game on the British Phantoms. 50 of these engines had been delivered to China in 1975, and a license agreement was signed a year later. The aircraft looked somewhat like a cross between a Sepcat Jaguar and a Panavia Tornado, but was significantly larger than either of the two, with the two crew, the pilot and the Wizzo, sitting in tandem. The JH-7 had 7 hardpoints, 2 of which were for PL-5s. It was to carry up to 4 YJ-81K anti-ship missiles, also known as the C-801. Alternatively, up to 20 250kg bombs could be carried under the wings. Additionally, the aircraft mounted an internal Type 23-3 twin-barreled 23mm cannon, very similar to the Soviet Gush-23. This was all built around a Type 232H Eagle Eye pulse Doppler radar, as well as a fly-by-wire system. The first prototype JH-7 took flight on the 14th of December 1988. Testing continued for a full decade under high security, with no pictures appearing to the public until late 1996. The aircraft made its first public appearance at the Zhuhai Air Show in 1998, where it was named the FBC-1, Fighter Bomber China 1, or the Flying Leopard, Faibao, for export. After completing the first phase of testing, the JH-7 was deemed operational by the Navy in 1994, but full-scale production was delayed due to problems with the WS-9 engines, leading to the PLAAF dropping its plans to order the JH-7, and instead order the Russian-built Su-30 MKK, rendering the JH-7 as purely a naval aircraft. This was given the NATO reporting name of the Flounder. It officially entered service with the PLAN in 2001. In 1999, an improved version of the JH-7, known as the JH-7A, was developed and subsequently entered production. It featured composites in its airframe, lightening it by 400 kilos, as well as an improved fly-by-wire system and better avionics. The most notable of these changes was the new JL-10A Mountain Eagle J-band pulse Doppler radar. The number of wing hardpoints was increased from 6 to 8, and 2 more pylons for equipment pods were added underneath the air intakes, bringing the total to 11. It also gained a new windshield, an additional ventral fin, and lacked wing boundary layer fences. The JH-7A can carry unguided and guided bombs supported by a laser designator pod, as well as YJ-81K and YJ-82K ASMs. It can also carry new air-to-air missiles, including the PL-5E2, the PL-7, and the PL-8B. Furthermore, for SEAD missions, it can carry the Russian-built KH-31P anti-radar missile. These new changes allowed it to carry a higher weight of munitions, with an extra 1,500 kilo capacity. The JH-7A entered service in 2004 with both the PLAAF and the PLAN. Production of the Faibao is still ongoing to this day. In 2009, a report came out that Xi'an had been in talks with Rolls-Royce and Snecma to acquire new engines for the JH-7. The president of SNECMA was quoted as having regular discussions with Chinese authorities about the possibility of including M53 engines on the JH-7, the same engine used on the Mirage 2000, although it is unclear if these discussions ever went anywhere. A limited number of PLAN JH-7As were modified for the electronic warfare role, carrying ECM and ELINT pods in a similar manner to the US Navy Grumman EA-6B Prowler. The JH-7A is perfect for this role, with its twin engines and 2 crew, the Wizzo becoming an electronic warfare officer. To this day, nearly 300 JH-7s have been built, the majority of which are JH-7As. A recent addition in the November 2025 Spearhead update, the JH-7 sits at rank 7, just after the Q5L. We'll give it an overview first, before delving into how to play it in air and ground battles. In War Thunder, the JH-7 is powered by 2 powerful WS-9s, which give it enough thrust to be a fairly fast aircraft. It has a rip speed of 1330 km an hour, which it can reach fairly easily, at full afterburner in a straight line. It's a fairly large aircraft, and while not lightweight, weighing between 15 and 25 tons depending on fuel, it's remarkably nimble and has very responsive controls at medium and high speeds, allowing you to throw the plane around, although it does get really sluggish once you take it to those really slow speeds. It's equipped with the modern JL-10A radar seen on the JH-7A, so it might be reasonable to assume that the JH-7 we have in-game is something of a modernization. This is supported by the missiles it can carry, being able to bring either PL-5Bs, Cs, or E-2s. These missiles are all very similar but have important differences. The PL-5 is a very fast missile, having a very powerful booster, which means that, while it does have decent pull, it doesn't pull much off the rail, so you're best aiming it off bore sight and giving it some lead to hit your target. The PL-5B is rear aspect only, whilst the PL-5C is all aspect, and the PL-5E2 has a little more pull, as well as having IRCCM, meaning that in the rear aspect it rejects most flares as its seeker narrows greatly. These missiles have their own pylons in the wingtips, so you don't have to sacrifice them for attacking ground targets. In terms of other armament, the JH-7 has a Type 23-3 with 200 rounds, which is a copy of the Gush 23. This is a fairly decent cannon for hitting deflection shots, although you don't have a ton of ammo, and its mounting position on the bottom right of the plane can make hitting shots a little tricky as it's not centered. As it doesn't have a lot of pen, it's not great for attacking ground targets. As for suspended ordnance, the JH-7 can carry unguided rockets, unguided bombs, and anti-ship missiles. You can bring up to 20 250 kilo or 8 500 kilo bombs, with the option of having them parachute slowed. As for rockets, you can bring 28 Type 90 heat rockets, or 16 Type 130 HE rockets. Those anti-ship missiles I mentioned earlier are YJ-81Ks, which are decently large active radar homing missiles. To use them, you can lock a ship with your radar by switching to TWS-C mode. They have a range of 50 kilometers and will skim the sea. They're fairly reliable at hitting their target, although their 83.2 kilo semi-armor piercing warheads don't do an incredible amount of damage, especially against bigger targets such as carriers, mostly because they hit above the waterline. For its defensive suite, the JH-7 has the KJ-8602A radar warning receiver, which is a digital RWR with target ID that allows you to detect threats on the E to J band. For countermeasures, you have 84 large caliber countermeasures that you can split between flares and chaff as you see fit. In AirRB, the JH-7 sits at 11.3 and is pretty incredible for its BR. This is chiefly because of your PL-5E2 missiles, which are standouts of that BR considering the platform they're on. Most of the other carriers of IRCCM missiles at this BR are significantly slower platforms, like the Su-39 and the A-10C, so you have a rather large edge against them. While you can bomb bases, I would honestly recommend focusing on being a fighter and just bringing your 2 missiles. I'd also run a full tank of fuel in most cases, although you can probably get away with 80%. Make sure to keep an eye out on your speed, and if needed, stage your afterburner so you're not overspeeding. Your speed and missiles are going to be key to most engagements, so I'd recommend hanging back a little and swooping in from the side or behind other engagements, as if you manage to get a PL5E2 rear aspect on someone, they're usually dead even if they flare. They're fairly long range compared to other IRCCM missiles, so you can usually get someone from around 3 kilometers if they're not going too much faster than you. When you either run out of missiles or need to deal with an opponent without them, the JH-7 can work for gunfighting, although you'll have to be careful. It won't be able to beat light fighters reliably in dogfights, but it can hold its own very well against planes such as the F4s that you'll see a lot of at this BR. Just be mindful that the cannon is quite hard to aim. For your countermeasures, I'd recommend splitting them evenly between flares and chaff. If you insist on base bombing, you'll want to bring this loadout, which allows you to hit 2 bases. Make sure to use the parachute bombs, as their 500 kg ones have significantly more explosive mass than their normal counterparts. In Ground RB, the JH-7 sits at 10.3, where it's a strong contender in a very competitive field. China's 10.3 Ground RB has an incredible lineup of planes, meaning the JH-7 is competing for its slot with the J7E, the absolute queen of dogfights, and the Q5L, a very solid precision strike platform. As you lack guided ordnance, no, your YJ-81Ks will not hit tanks, you'll be relegated to unguided CAS. You really shine in how much CAS you can do, as well as your all-aspect IRCCM missiles. Compared to the J7E and Q5L, you can carry many more bombs, and your flight model fits somewhere between the two. I'd recommend carrying the bombs, as the J7E can carry the same amount of rockets as you. It's your choice as to whether to bring the 500 kilo or the 250 kilo bombs. The JH-7 also works very well as an interceptor, with those PL5E2s being absolutely lethal. The JH-7A sits at rank 8, right after the JH-7. It's accompanied by the premium JH-7A prototype, which is identical, so I'll talk about both as one here. I'll go over whether the premium is worth buying later. The JH-7A was arguably the best CAS aircraft in the game when it was introduced in the October 2023 Kings of Battle update, but much better options and more capable SPAA have meant that it's fallen to the wayside in recent years. In air battles, it was always in a bit of a weird spot, feeling really overtiered for its BR. This was until the recent November 2025 Spearhead update, where it finally received a major glow-up, gaining the ability to carry 4 KH-29Ts instead of 2, and, more importantly, 4 PL5E2s instead of the non-IRCCM PL5C. This makes it significantly better to play, as it's now competitive with other IRCCM planes at similar BRs, although, like most planes around this compressed BR range, it can struggle in up tiers. It's by no means incredible, but it's no longer a struggle bus. The JH-7A in War Thunder mostly only differs from the JH-7 in terms of suspended ordnance, although it is a little lighter, which does make it a little more maneuverable. While it has new additions, the JH-7A can still carry the same ordnance as the JH-7, except for the YJ-81Ks, which it loses. This is complemented by an additional pylon for either a single 250 kilo bomb, either unguided or laser guided, or another missile. To start off the new weapons, first it's important to look at the KADC-03A targeting pod, which is a nice, high-resolution pod also found on the J10A and J11B. This has high-resolution thermals and target tracking, and can guide your laser and GPS-guided bombs and TV-guided ATGMs. The most important CAS weapon the JH-7A gets is probably the KH-29T. You can carry 4 of these large, TV-guided ATGMs, which boast a 13km launch range and are highly lethal against anything they hit. Next up, you have laser-guided bombs. These are the GB series of bombs, and include the GB-250, GB-500, and GB-1000. The GB500 is rather underwhelming as it lacks any form of inertial guidance, while the GB250 and 1000 are dual-mode laser and GPS, meaning that if they lose laser lock, they won't drift off course. These bombs are also broadly better than their counterparts in other trees. As compared to paveways, they often bite the laser lock from much further away. Finally, you can bring GPS-guided glide bombs. These come in the form of the LS6 250 and 500, and have a very long range if you drop them from sufficient speed and altitude. They don't have any sort of correction, and will instead hit the point they were targeted on at launch. If you mark the map when you drop, you can actually hit things far out of your targeting pod's range. In Air RB, the JH-7A sits at 12.3, where it's currently a viable and rather fun aircraft to fly. I'd recommend flying out with a full tank of fuel, as your engines are quite thirsty. Compared to the JH-7, your playstyle is more or less exactly the same, although having 2 more PL5E2s makes a huge difference, as you can afford to take riskier shots, meaning you'll rack up more kills and stay in the fight for longer, as well as having more impact in the outcome of the match. There is, however, another difference. In addition to your PL5E2s, the JH-7A has access to up to 4 more missiles. These aren't particularly maneuverable, but they can still work in a pitch, and if they hit, they will obliterate whatever they touch. This is the comically large R60. This is the KH-29T. These aren't technically air-to-air missiles, but don't let that stop you. If you want to punish people landing, or stalled out, or flying an A-10, or just gamble in head-ons, the KH-29T might be perfect for you. In Ground RB, the JH-7A sits at 11.7, where it's a very good plane to bring. China has a decent 11.7 lineup, so if you're not up here to 12.7, where you just get shut down by the big SAMs, it's quite a good CAS platform. We went over the armaments in the earlier overview section, and I'd recommend bringing either of these 2 loadouts depending on what you're up against. While your 23mm cannon does get AP belts, it's really quite lackluster, and I'd advise against using it unless you're trying to strafe completely unarmored targets. For spading the JH-7, start with flares and chaff before moving on to grab the PL5Cs. With those, grab G-suit and new boosters to reach rank 3. Here, get wings repair and then the Type 250s to get rank 4. With those done, grab the PL5E2s so that you have your air-to-air armament secured. Next, grab engine, compressor, cover, airframe, and fuselage repair. Grab EFS since the JH-7 can benefit from that rarely, before upgrading your cannon with the offensive 23mm and new 23mm cannons. Finish it off by grabbing the rest of the bombs and rockets, and then pick up the YJ-81Ks. For spading the JH-7A, there's 2 paths you can take. The first one will be if you intend to be spading it in air battles, while the second is for CAS in ground battles. For air battles, start with PL5Bs and then go straight for PL5Cs. To avoid radar missiles at this time, try to stick low and multipath. Next, grab flares and chaff before going for the G-suit. After that, grab new boosters before moving on to PL5E2s and wings repair. Next, you'll want to grab the offensive 23mm and the new 23mm cannons to get you to rank 4. With those done, grab engine, compressor, cover, EFS, airframe, and fuselage repair. With those done, you can go for ground ordnance. For ground battles, start with the KADC-03A targeting pod and the GB250s. Then grab the PL5Bs, and PL5Cs, so you have something to better defend yourself. Next, grab the G suit to help you pull those harder Gs when evading SPAA. Next, grab the PL5E2s and the GB500 to get you up to rank 4. Remember to not actually bother equipping the GB500s. After that, grab the KH-29Ts, the GB1000s, the Type 250, and the Type 500 to finish up the useful ordnance. You're now free to grab flight performance mods, so start with the engine and compressor, before grabbing the new boosters, wings repair, airframe, fuselage repair, and flares and chaff. Finish up with the EFS before going for any remaining mods. For the JH-7A prototype, you're a premium, so you don't have to worry about spading it. Instead, I'll briefly talk about whether or not I think it's worth buying. As China's only rank 8 premium, the JH-7A prototype is able to research every aircraft in the Chinese tree, and would be able to research rank 9 if and when it comes. That said, we only have up to rank 8 in the game currently, so I wouldn't recommend basing your purchase off predictions. The JH-7A does have competition, the J7D. Right now, the J7D can also research the entirety of the Chinese tree from rank 7, and comes in at around $10 less. The J7D is arguably under-tiered right now, so is in a bit of a stronger position than the JH-7A. And if brain-off AirRB grinding is your thing, it's probably a better buy. The JH-7A is also a copy-paste of a tech tree vehicle, so if you want something unique, the J7D is a better buy. With that said, I personally find the J7D really boring to fly, despite it being objectively really strong. The JH-7A's gameplay currently feels much more engaging to me, and I feel I actually had fun with it. Ultimately, I'd probably recommend waiting for a sale before buying either, and which one to buy depends on what you're looking for in a premium. And that's it for the JH-7s that we have in War Thunder. This video has been a remake and expansion of an older one on the JH-7A, where at the end I discuss the changes I'd like to see in the JH-7 family. And those have all since come true. I've enjoyed making, or rather remaking, this video, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it too. My next video will be on the BE6 family, but if you want more from me, there's a link to my Discord server in the description. And that's all from me. I've been girltwink, fly safe.